Faceplant, granular synthesis, it's now a reality. Usually I do some sort of intro and blah, 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 but I think right now let's jump into some audio examples and we'll talk after. These are a couple tests I did while playing briefly with the granular synthesis engine inside Faceplant, and I was using molecules, which are 200 sources for granular synthesis specifically designed for Faceplant. The link is in the description if you need some cool sources to kickstart your granular synthesis inside Faceplant. Now it's time to talk. Hello everyone, I'm Black Marvin. I'm a progressive psychedelic trance artist. I'm a professional sound designer and almost a teacher for electronic music production. It happened, finally. Faceplant got its granular synthesis engine. And today in this video, it's pretty much an explanation of it. I have other videos that we're going to explore a lot of granular synthesis techniques because you'll soon realize that granular, it's one thing, but it can take many directions. And today it's really about explaining how the granular engine works. And, maybe if you're new to granular synthesis, what this is about, what the hype is about, and how does it work inside Faceplant. So without waiting anymore, let's dive in and learn how Faceplant's granular engine work. So here we are inside Faceplant. If you want to access the granular engine, you're going to go here, select granular. And then this is what you get. I'm going to go ahead and select a sample because it's going to be much easier to explain the granular synthesis with an actual sample source. I'm going to go and use the molecule granular sources for today. They are designed specifically for this granular engine inside Faceplant. Let's get a chaotic crystal texture. Granular synthesis, it's very simple. It's sourcing audio material. In this case, these are samples that we load, and it's creating grains from that source. What are grains? They are basically super small slices of audio. So grains have a length and they also have a timing or a rate if we want. So these are two big parameters we're going to see. Actually, we have the grain rate here and we have the grain size here. Another very important thing is that marker here. It marks where it's going to source the audio. And you can see that the sample is sort of like in the shadows. And we have this little light area. And it's basically indicating us the area it's going to source its grain from. In order to illustrate that concept a bit better, here we have the grain start position. So right now, it's going to source its little slices, the grains. It's going to source them from here and about here. You can see that this is represented by the area where there's light. That's why there's that shadow and light concept here. And if we switch to that mode, which is bipolar, so it's going to source up front of the marker and also behind the marker. And now you can see that the area where there's overlay of light, it's now before and after the marker. So now this is how it sounds. You can see that's a lot of fun already. So let's break this down. Like I said, there's the grain size and the grain rate. First, let's break down the grain rate concept. We're gonna lower this up to 0 and there's gonna be no grains. And it's gonna be easy to hear the grains being generated, and hopefully that will help you understand granular synthesis better. And we're gonna start slowly with a couple grains, and then we're gonna get a higher rate, and it's gonna give just a higher density. If you're going for something like a little marbles of sounds or like sparks and little plucky and very slicey elements, a very few number of grains is going to be great for that. But if you want to recreate some kind of like a pad or a sustained soundscape, it's going to be better to have a huge amount of grains. Let's start at 0 grain right now. So you can see that it started with a couple of slices of audio and it ramped up to a sustained tone. Now, you can also hear that it kind of reached some kind of fixed tone, which is not very gorgeous, especially if you're going for the pad stuff. And now I'm going to talk about these. These really come handy right now. So first, let's start with the timing, actually. Timing is going to introduce some randomization with the start time. We really get that synthetic, fixed tone because of the timing. It always source at the same place. We're going to add some randomization to the source. First, let's change the timing, and you're going to see that it's going to change a bit the behavior of the slices of audio, of the grains. Now it feels a bit more organic and random. I'm going to give you another example where this is going to be very useful. I'm going to just take a pause from this one right here, and I'm going to go into vocal sustained sources. And these are vocal sources. And let's say we're trying to do some kind of vocal pad, and we want it to have some kind of organic feel. Let's hear how it sounds if we just dial back the timing to 0. Does not sound very organic, does it? But if we introduce more timing, let's go to 100%. I think it's the best example to understand like how timing can play a role of that organic feel. Let's move on now to the level. I'm not going left to right, but I'm going from like, there's a link between all the parameters I show, but don't worry, we're gonna see all of them. Now level, it's going to introduce some randomization into the volume of each grain. One is going to be louder, one less, and yeah, it's basically adding some randomization. Let's hear how it sounds. All right, with this example, it was very subtle. It did contribute to a more organic feel, but don't worry, I got a good example to really help you understand. We're gonna switch sources for that. Gonna go into textural sources. Gonna pick controller swing. Now this is what we have. This is just a sound of a texture. It's actually an Xbox controller. That's the sound of an Xbox controller. Now we're gonna change something else. We're gonna go ahead and change the grain density. By default, it comes in the grain mode, so you can add more grains, but there's some other stuff you can do. We can go here and sync it. So this is basically going to generate grains on that timing. Now let's hear how this sounds. Also, let's revert the timing to 0. So you can now hear that we're back to something very mathematical, in a sense that like it's always sourcing at the same place and it's always giving us grain at a very fixed tempo, which is really cool for totally other style of synthesis, you know. We were doing some like vocal scapes that sounds true and organic, but now we're doing something almost percussive that has like a very digital precision. Now it's time to show you the level. I think it's gonna show a bit better in that context, since now if I hit play, we have something very like I said, it's like almost time clocked and very similar. But now if we introduce a bit of level randomness, it's gonna fluctuate a bit. Now you can hear that it's not as steady as it is if we have the level randomization at 100%. So yeah, now hopefully you grasp this one a bit better. I have a very easy one to show, and it's the pan. Pan is, you know, you guessed it, is gonna introduce some randomization into pan settings, and it's really great to give life also to your granular synthesis. I don't know if you see the potential, but it's already getting in a really cool place. Now we can talk about the reverse. So basically you can see that grains are playing forward. And if we have more reverse randomization, it's gonna introduce the possibility for these grains to be played backwards. For example. And if you pay attention to that, that's something I was expecting from kilohertz, and it's the visual feedback is so simple yet very very effective. So you can really see these grains. You can see them happening, and you also see them when they are in reverse, as well as hearing them. I'm gonna do it one last time because I really want you to grasp it. And of course, if you put it all the way to reverse, the probability is 100%. So you're basically just flipping everything into reverse. Things can get really creative with that too. Now, next thing I want to show is the pitch randomization. And again, we're going to change the sample source because this one is atonal, and it's going to show much more if we choose a tonal source. So we're going to go back, I think, on vocal sustained sources. It's going to be very easy to identify. Now let's bring some pitch randomization. That's pretty much it. It's easier to understand like this, but also if you have like a very high density, it can also act almost like a bit as a unison kind of thing. You know, I'm gonna do some more video on that and we can tackle this, but yeah, basically that's pitch randomization. And finally, position. You're gonna see, yeah. So you can see again with a super cool visual feedback. Like I said, you have the shadow, you have the light. You should step into the light. But yeah, position, it's gonna source, instead of sourcing very close to that marker, it will potentially source grains a bit farther and farther up until you can actually have a very, very high randomization, because now you can see it can potentially source a grain from here to here. This is how it sounds now. So I think you can hear that there's a difference. We're gonna switch to another example. It's gonna shine even more. We're back into chaotic crystal texture, and I think you're gonna hear this one a lot. So now you can see that it's sourcing grains from everywhere instead of, and when it's at 0, it's just steady. This is crystalline echo 2. I want to do a small demonstration. Same thing with this one. Yeah, since this one there's some sort of decline and change over time, yeah, it's adding a funky effect because it's sourcing grains from everywhere. Now we have aligned phase. In order to understand that, you need to understand how phase alignment plays a role. But let's say if you're getting some, I haven't even had some weird clicks, I would say, with this one, but there's something called zero crossing, and it can add a bit more stability to your grains. If you're experiencing instability, I would say you can check in aligned phase, and apparently there's an algorithm that's gonna align phases for you. It's super cool to have it here. I want to say also, if I compared that granular engine to others I've tested, it's much more cleaner. There's something in the past I had when I was working on granular synthesis, and it was generating sometimes noise, and it's due to like grain alignment, but so far the algorithm is very good. But yeah, there's phase alignment if you want. There's also warm start. What this does is, let's say you're changing notes. Let's say first you're hitting a C like this, and then you're hitting E. So whenever you're switching notes and warm start is not active, it's gonna just restart its grain sourcing protocol, if we can call it like this. But if you do warm start, it's gonna take these grains that are already active and it's gonna switch the note. So it's sort of transferring the active grains to your new note. While if it's not active, it's restarting its grain cycle all over again. If you're looking to create something that is plucky and you want to maintain the energy when you're switching notes, I suggest you engage warm start. I can do a small example here. I think if we do something like this, it's going to be even more noticeable. So this is without warm start, and with warm start, I don't know if you hear, without the warm start, it sounds a bit like more lazier, again, more organic. But if you're looking for something snappy, I would suggest engage the warm start and you're gonna get instant result. Now I'm back to 116, and there's this very important concept that I didn't touch yet, and it's the grain envelope. And yeah, there's really 3 fundamental parameters in granular synthesis. Your position, because if you switch that, it's changing the grains a lot. There's the grain density that we saw. There's also the rate, but I think it's fairly self-explained. And since I showed these 2, I'm gonna stay with sync. But now there's also the grain shape, actually. It's grain envelope, but also let's call it grain shape for you to understand. Because the longer the grains, it's a bit similar to the density. The longer the grains, the more sustained and complete it feels. And the shorter the grains, the more like it sounds like needles and small slices of audio. Again, let's start very small. That's like the most snappiest and shortest setting ever. The attack of the grain, it's very snappy, and we have a duration of 12.4 milliseconds. So that would be very good for percussive stuff. And if you want to do some more sustained soundscapes, I'd suggest going for something like this, because if you have a long attack for the grain, it helps the grain blend together. But for fun, we're gonna go from the snappiest setting to the most, I would say, sustained, quote unquote, setting. Let's do that. So yeah, much more sustained. But this one has this, like you can hear the difference, cleaner result. But this one, there's like voluntarily, there's some kind of reverse built into it. If we go back to our sustained vocal sources, it's gonna show, we're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna hear the difference. We're gonna start with a very sustained, and then we're gonna go to the small slices. Yeah, I think you get the point now, but I really wanted to show this because it's, there's so many direction we can take with granular synthesis. And yeah, like I said, that's one of the three fundamental parameter. The grain size, it helps and it changes stuff a lot. Last thing I want to show, already we're already at the last thing, but there's a chord section here. If we engage the chord, if you're familiar with the sampler here inside Faceplant, we have the unison, but there's some modes here that are chords. It's very similar, but there's this concept also. There's some sort of like randomization also. It's not just going to give you like a plain chord. It had some movement, and there's also the range. And I think first I'm going to start with octaves. Actually, it loads in major, but we're going to go with octaves. And yeah, it's going to apply chords to the grains. But also, like I said, there's some motion in there. So first, let's listen the octave. It's cool, isn't it? Yeah, so like you can hear, there's some sort of oscillation. It's instead of doing like a chord with all the notes at the same time, it's cycling through each note of the chord, or whatever you're giving it. If it's octave, it's cycling through the range that you're giving it, and it's cycling in that fashion. So it's either strum up, strum down, you have a up and down, and you have a random. That's dope. And that's it for the overview. I had to really contain myself because I wanted to go in many directions because this is so stimulating creatively. But today it's done with the overview. Stay tuned because I'm going to have some videos on multiple granular technique because that opens up doors, so many doors. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of fun, a lot of creativity possible, all inside Faceplant. And these are two concepts that are really important to me when it comes to producing electronic music, being able to have fun and being able to be very creative, and it's all possible inside Faceplant. So this video was about showing how the granular engine in Faceplant work. It's far from being the last video, far from being the last video I'm gonna do on Faceplant, but also far from being the last video I'm going to do on granular synthesis. I want to do one where I expand on how we can apply it to psytrance specifically, also how we can apply it to cinematic sound design, to ambient sound design, and more. There's a lot of stuff coming, so if you don't want to miss that up, consider subscribing to the channel and like this video. Always a good thing. And if you need help learning electronic music production, I have a community of students where there's group lessons, one-to-one lessons, and a lot of educational content. And you can become a better producer, sound designer, and mixing and mastering engineer. If you're interested, you can write to me on Instagram and we can discuss how we can help you. I'm going to see you in another video. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stay tuned, stay creative, happy producing. I'm going to see you soon.